Before I start the video, I'd like to give a shout out to my new patrons, Amy Denver and Goth Syrup. Thank you so much. Today we are on AskReddit for our part 1 of this series, What is the worst drug experience you have ever had? Here are some responses. My ex and I tripped LSD with each other quite a bit, about 20 times or so. They were usually awesome, powerful experience that strengthened our bond. One day, her and I are tripping, and I just started working a construction job, so my build started to get bigger, but my BMI percentage stayed the same for the most part. I was in college at the time trying to save money. Her and I are hour 7 for the trip, and are about to make love. If you've ever had sex on LSD, on the come down, you know how much of an amazing experience it can be. Just as I'm about to stick it in, she tells me she is concerned about my weight gain, that I'm working and not focusing on my studies, and that I'm just letting myself fall apart. She starts to sob and says I shouldn't be working, and how I'm becoming a pathetic shell of myself. I started to cry and slept on the couch. I accepted her apology the next night, but it was one of the things that destroyed our relationship. She slowly started to show she had little respect for me. I should have broke up with her that morning, instead of dragging the relationship along for another year. Mushrooms. Drove out to the middle of nowhere with 2 friends, ate about 3 grams each. Sunny, we walk into the woods, kicks in, and it's amazing. The ground is breathing, everything is warm, and we wander back to the car. Doors are all open, feeling great. Rando fucking dog just jumps into the back seat and lays down. Nice as fuck, convinced it's a good omen from the universe. Pet the dog, everyone's happy as fuck. Clouds roll in. Gets really dark. Wind starts fucking howling. Dog runs off. We shut the doors and are trapped in the car. Friend's radio doesn't work. Silence. The car won't start. This is before cell phones. Trapped in a silent car in the middle of nowhere in a bad weather tripping balls is not a fun experience. I decided to smoke all my weed, but it did not help. One friend goes dead silent for hours, other friend looks super worried, keeps saying weird shit like, "Do you see all of those snakes? We need to leave, but there's nowhere to go. Why did that dog leave us?" And, "All I can taste is blood." Ask silent friend a few times how he's feeling. All I can get is a monotoned, "I'm good, man." Kind of fell into a really dark hole in that car, all 3 of us, just consumed by the mutual realization that existence was meaningless and everything was terrible, without escape. The car eventually started and we went to go see Troy in theaters just so we could go somewhere. Movie is fucking terrible, and the entire time the friend keeps whispering to me, "Everyone is staring at us. Seriously, dude, they're all staring at us." I took shrooms again with the same friend later on. He started talking about fucking piles of snakes everywhere, and I literally just ran away. Won't bother with the worst, as thinking you'll die before the night is out, it doesn't make for an amusing story. Instead, I'll go for a further down the bad list story, which is a little funnier. So it was Glastonbury Festival, which back in my younger days basically meant a 5-day drug binge. We were about midway through, so not starting the day on an even keel. We had mushroom tea for breakfast, wandered around a bit smoking weed, and we were currently back where we were camping for lunch and a bit of a chill out. It was a lovely sunny day and we were camped in a view of one of the stages, so myself and a friend decided to just skip food and drop acid instead. We were laid on the grass leaning back against the tent, listening to whatever band were on at the time, basking in the sun and people watching. Occasionally we turned to face each other to talk about something, then go back to just staring into space, giggling and getting excited when anyone wearing something shiny walked past. Now at some point during all this, my friend obviously noticed the sun was in his eyes and put on sunglasses, an act I hadn't noticed. The next time he spoke, I turned to face him. I couldn't see his eyes, just round black circles where his eyes should be. Then as the fear kicked in, I watched him slowly morph into a giant man-panda. Panicking, I managed to blurt out, "Dude, what the fuck is wrong with your eyes?" Now, a friend turning into a man-panda isn't a good thing when you're tripping, but it turns out having someone panic and ask what the fuck is wrong with your eyes is even worse. He freaked out and started clawing at his face, screaming at me to tell him what was wrong with him. Unfortunately, rather than seeing a buddy needing a little reassurance, I see the man-panda getting angry, flailing hands around and yelling at me like it was about to attack. Fuck, it's do or die time. I dive at him and try to wrestle him to the ground. He's still freaking out about his eyes being wrong in some unspecified way and trying to fight me off. I'm terrified that this bizarre hybrid creature is going to devour me as soon as I release my grip. Now, as I said at the start of this, we were leaning against the tent and basking in the sun. Consequently, whilst we couldn't see into the tent, from the inside of the tent, we were lit up like a shadow puppet display, and another friend who was inside the tent was watching things go wrong and had realized we need her help. Her idea of help? A nice group hug to calm us down. Except she is a moron and just reaches out to wrap her arms around us both from inside the tent. So now while I'm fighting for dear life against Man-Panda, I realize we are both being devoured by a fucking tent monster. Handprint-shaped bulges are coming out of the wall and trying to grab at us and reach around us. Then the remainder of our group returned, the sensible ones who had wandered off to find a food stall and buy lunch. I don't know how long the whole episode lasted or how long they'd been watching for, but I just remember sort of suddenly snapping back to an almost reality, to realize they were stood all around us just laughing their asses off. The three of us were in a heap on the floor, rolling around screaming, and the tent was flattened. Good times. A buddy of mine put LSD in a ham sandwich and gave it to me because I refused to try it, started to trip balls and didn't know why, and I started to freak out. My buddy came clean and told me what he did. I was not friends with him after that. Definitely was not a good time. My one bad trip. I took shrooms. Not sure how much, I think 2 or 3 grams, so nothing extreme. First thing that happened was a really intense come up, like more intense than I've ever felt. I got that whole everything is faces thing, and felt dizzy and sick, and started to sweat like a pig. I tried to get up to go to the bathroom and collapsed. I smacked my hip really badly on the floor, and I just laid there in pain for a while until my husband came out and helped me to bed. It doesn't stop there, unfortunately. Halfway through, time started slowing down. Way down. I'm used to temporal fuckity on my shrooms trips, and I have a solid coping skill for it. I look at the clock, count out 3 hours, and say, if I don't feel better by X time, then I can start to panic. Time is linear, and even if it takes me 3 years to get there, I will feel better then. So anytime I check the clock in those next 3 hours, even if I'm feeling shitty, I know it's just because it hasn't been very long. So here's where shit got weird. Usually I can count out 3 hours. I think at this point it was around 10 or 11 p.m., and that had threw me for a loop, because my brain was having a lot of trouble doing simple math, and I knew there wasn't a 13 o'clock, but I couldn't remember how the changing over worked. And after a long ass time, probably 1 minute, of trying to do simple addition and failing, I couldn't do my coping skill at all. Time continued to slow down again and again. I could hear this horrible unwinding noise, like a spring creaking against itself, with each slowdown. I had seen Ant-Man recently, and I was really scared. I'd slowed down so much I'd basically be stuck in the quantum state of time. I felt like I couldn't reach out to my husband, sleeping next to me, couldn't scream for help. I tried, but nothing came out. And I was just stuck staring at the ceiling, blown the fuck away. Throughout this, I also had some really dark and creepy imagery, and I couldn't figure out where my body stopped and the rest of existence began, but that was all pretty normal. Finally, a few hours later, I think I had dozed off a little, but I woke up to time coming up to meet me. I swear to God, I could feel time hit me. It was like I had my head stuck in a rubber band affixed to something and had been running. The further I ran, the more time slowed down. Well, that rubber band came loose and hit me in the back of the head. I got a massive headache, but I didn't even give a shit. I just started sobbing on my husband's chest and wouldn't let him go. I thought I'd never be able to interact with him again. I was so sure this was how I was going to die, or at least be stuck catatonic. Poor guy had no idea what was going on, and of course I was still pretty high, so my attempts to explain it was garbled nonsense. I have done acid and Molly plenty of times since then, but I just can't bring myself to do shrooms, ever again. I was about 5 years old. I had a little sister about 7 months old. My mom's gone at work in the middle of the day. My addict dad is unconscious on the couch with a heroin needle in his arm. Little sister is hungry or pooped or something and is screaming bloody murder. I'm entirely losing my shit, not knowing what to do. I'm sitting on my dad's chest, hitting him, trying to wake him up. Screaming, tears streaming down my face, totally falling apart, went on for about 30 minutes. I called the police because that's what you do when you have a problem when you're a little kid. They contacted my grandma. She came over and took care of my sister. That was a pretty rough day. I've taken a considerable amount of LSD in my life and have had rather uncomfortable hallucinations and journeys whilst on the drug, but no experience compares to the horror of 2CB. My friend had some Lucy left for himself, so I reach out to a guy I know who dabbles in selling psychs from time to time. He says he has some 2CB in a capsule, so I figured I'd give it a shot. I've tripped with this friend probably a dozen times, and he was the first to grace me with LSD. Anyhow, an hour goes by waiting for the come up, and he leaves the room for some reason I cannot recall. Alone I sat, and I vividly remember hearing the utmost creepiest fucking music playing, softly in some distant background. I was isolated in a bedroom with no music on, and the room took a dungeon-like candlelit ambience to it. I also remember seeing 3 black portals, or spirals, emanating from the ceiling's corners. On top of the twisted fucking music and bizarre candlelit room, I could hear things arguing over which would have me. The only plausible explanation at the time were demons, and I am not religious whatsoever. The things were legitimately disputing over who would have me, and would whisper to me that I should kill them all, chop them up, over and over and over again. What I felt was primal fucking fear. I haven't felt that level of fear since I was a toddler. Eventually, my friend comes back to the room, trying to chat, and he could see that I was struggling with something. His back is towards me as he's attempting conversation, and as he turns around, his grin is ear to fucking ear, and his eyes as well as upper cheeks and orbital sockets are black. A black too dark to comprehend. This only aggravates my current state, and I immediately ran out of the room and into the basement to get away. He follows me down and ridicules me for doing devil stuff, spray painting pentagrams and other adolescent tomfoolery, as if he knew exactly what just confronted me. The voices followed me to the basement with that same recommendation. Inevitably, I got in hold with my girlfriend, who whisked me away to her house, and I don't think I've ever felt so much peace as I did when I left my friend's house. This experience fucked me up. I considered seeing a priest despite my hatred for religion. I wanted to see a shrink. I didn't want to be alone in the dark for weeks. I still drop LSD to this day, but I'll never fucking touch anything in the 2C family again. When I was 15, I had a group of friends that were a bit older than me. They had told me about their experiences taking triple C's, cough and cold pills. They compared it to weed and just said it was more intense, so I said, fuck it, and we decided to take some. I took 10 at first, which is what everyone else took. About an hour later, everyone else is feeling it, but I'm not. So again, I say fuck it and take 3 more. We smoke some weed and I still don't feel shit, and everyone else is fucked up, and that's pissing me off. So I call my weed dealer and he tells me he has Klonopins. I buy 2 and take them. This is where shit gets fucked up. Apparently we went to this dude's house and they were playing music and trying to get us to dance. I sat on a chair and just stared at the wall. I didn't move or talk to anyone. My friends realized how fucked up I was and decided I needed to go home. Except I can't fucking walk. The whole walk home, I'm stumbling and just completely out of it. A cop drove by and saw me and obviously stopped us. Well, my dad was a cab driver at the time and was driving down the street and saw me fucked up out of my mind talking to a cop. So he stops and gets out, and the cop lets me go home with my dad. I insisted on going home and going to bed. He insisted on taking me to the ER. So now I'm at the hospital and everyone is questioning me. My friends told them what I took, and the doctors assumed I was trying to kill myself. So I got sent to a psych ward for a week. Not fun. Alright, I don't even know where to begin, so I'll just try to sum it up quickly since I'm on mobile. Back in 2012, my roommate and I frequently dropped acid, especially to attend underground forest music festivals, which we called Renegades. This was in the mountains of Santa Cruz, California, which is located just outside of Silicon Valley, where the redwoods get relatively thick. After the music stops around 5 a.m., the effects haven't even fully peaked. As soon as the music was cut and the lights dimmed, we noticed the people around us were all not exactly the kind you'd want to spend your time frying with. We pack it up regardless of being high as tits. She's driving, still frying on LSD, and I'm ready to go home. All of a sudden, the car spins out, and she screams. As I feel it tilting forward so uncomfortably, I knew immediately we were fucked. In a panic, I opened my door and jumped to the ledge. Yes, the ledge. We were in fact teetering on the ledge of a cliff. At the time, I wanted to convince myself the trip had just gone wrong and it was in my head. But no. My worst trip was May 2014, when we went to Cancun with a group of 24 fraternity brothers. I had done drugs a little bit here and there, but I was never a heavy drug user, and hey, I was in college, and that's what you do. So we're down there at an all-inclusive resort, drinking sunrise to sundown. We had a brother who had a prescription for Adderall, and we met a guy at the beach who sold us coke, which is sketchy in itself. Well, the mixture of coke, Adderall, cigs, drinking every day, and no sleep put my body in a lot of stress. The entire trip back to the States, I was having panic attacks, had never had one before, and threw up blood. I got home in the middle of the night, did not sleep the whole night, and ended up having my father drive me to the quick care in the morning. They checked my vitals and my resting heart rate was 170 beats per minute, through the roof. They hooked me up to an EKG and had to get an ambulance to get me to the ER. They ran a bunch of tests and just called it stress. Later that summer, I got diagnosed with anxiety and hypersensitivity to my heart rate now. Worst decision of my life, as I've been medicated ever since. I have had numerous tests run on my heart and I've never been the same from that trip.